get yourself ready for the job you want. Don't go the other way around, right? Don't say, well, I want the promotion, and then finally when you get the job, say, okay, now how do I do this job? Or what do I need to learn, right? It really should be the other way around. You should be constantly growing and developing yourself for the role that you want, so you're ready when it comes.
There's an old saying that used to be, right, at least kind of back in my earlier days, of dress for the job you want, not the job that you have. I don't know that saying is quite as applicable in the workplace any longer, right? Dress codes have definitely changed, but the theory is the same, right? Develop yourself for the role that you want, not the role that you're in. Welcome to the BetterCulture Podcast, where we make the clear connection between better culture and better business. This podcast is for leaders who want to build stronger teams, drive thriving companies, and enjoy your leadership role along the way. Now here's your host, Brett Hoogeveen, a leadership and culture aficionado, keynote speaker, and co-founder of BetterCulture.
Let's just say it straight. No one is coming to develop you. Your boss isn't, your company might not, and your regular to-do list definitely won't develop you. The best leaders we know, they didn't wait for someone else to provide their development. Today we're talking about what actually separates people who grow from people who stay stuck. We're talking about owning your own leadership development. I've got my co-host Kevin Hensel back in the seat today, and Kevin and I are going to talk about what anyone who's listening to this podcast can do to take accountability for their own development. Welcome back, Kevin. How are you?
Hello, Brett. Doing great. This is a favorite topic of mine.
I know it is.
So much opportunity.
And Kevin has such a history helping others develop and really pouring into what really leadership and personal development looks like. And so this is going to be a fun one for anybody listening.
I'm ready.
Great. So, Kevin, we're going to talk about really what it means to just take personal accountability for your development. What does that mean to you, and why don't more people do it?
Well, I think most people sit back and are waiting. They've got their own definition of leadership, right? Oftentimes much more positional or based on a role than recognizing, wait a second, I can build and develop along the way. Then if and when that opportunity comes, I'm much more prepared. So it's this waiting game for so many people rather than working proactively just on their own before something is driving them to have to do something.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people that I have worked with, they describe either for themselves or for others that maybe they're a little frustrated with, that they're sort of like, well, yeah, I want development, and they're waiting. Yeah. And that either means they're waiting for a promotion, they're waiting for an opportunity, they're waiting to be developed. And this conversation today is intended to really be the opposite. No, you don't need to wait to be developed. You can be constantly improving your skills, your capabilities, your ability to lead, to influence others, etc. Yeah. Right? Is that where we're headed?
It is. And it's interesting you say, right, as we talk about people waiting for that promotion, what we find in our work is so frequently organizations who do not have a development plan, even when people hit those roles. Right? So, yeah. Yes. So it makes this need to invest in your own development even more important and more urgent, if you will.
Yes. I'm always pushing people to say, get yourself ready for the job you want. Don't go the other way around, right? Don't say, well, I want the promotion, and then finally when you get the job, say, okay, now how do I do this job? Or what do I need to learn, right? It really should be the other way around. You should be constantly growing and developing yourself for the role that you want, so you're ready when it comes.
There's an old saying that used to be, right, at least kind of back in my earlier days, of dress for the job you want, not the job that you have. I don't know that saying is quite as applicable in the workplace any longer, right? Dress codes have definitely changed, but the theory is the same, right? Develop yourself for the role that you want, not the role that you're in.
Yes. So why don't people do it? What are some of the holdbacks on why people don't don't do that. That's one. They're waiting for the title that they want.
Yeah.
What are some other reasons?
Sometimes there's just a gap, right? They're not seeking the feedback they need to know where the development opportunities are. So there's a kind of a lack of knowledge of what do I need and where do I go to get that information.
Sure, absolutely. A couple other things that I see is sometimes people think development means a training program. Like that's, the only way we can do development is classes, coursework, specific programming, right?
Right.
As opposed to there's all kinds of ways that you can grow your skills, your mindsets, your capabilities, right?
Right. Absolutely. And those opportunities don't have to be these huge major commitments. Like you say, it's not taking a class. It's not necessarily going to a conference. It's not waiting for a training program that your employer is bringing to you. It's listening to a podcast, right? It's running through YouTube and watching a couple of videos and just absorbing what I call nuggets of information along the way to be able to build into something greater.
Absolutely. I probably could have done this in the introduction, but it jumps to mind right now. What's the upside of this? Okay, for people that understand this mindset of intentional, continuous self-improvement, self-development. Let's talk about that for a minute, right? If someone's listening and they're going, what is today's topic really all about? What's the outcome for people if they can understand how valuable it is to take responsibility for their own development?
Yeah, I may be going a little broader than what you're looking for here, Brett, but I think there's multiple benefits. One, certainly, if you're on a career path, right? How do you get noticed? How do you continue to be effective and productive and a positive influencer in the organization, and kind of working towards those career goals that you're after? But in your own personal development, it starts shifting your mindset, right? You start seeing things differently. You're not only from a career standpoint and a work standpoint, but from a personal standpoint, your interactions and your relationships start to shift. You start seeing things in the world maybe differently than you saw them before, right? It starts building a little breadth and depth that maybe wasn't as broad and deep as it had been before.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like to think of development as, if you have to go from A, or if you want to go from A to Z, okay? We'll use an alphabet metaphor here. A to Z on any skill set, right? This could be your leadership skills, which we talk a lot about here on this podcast, but this could also be your golf handicap, or this could be, saving for retirement, or whatever that might be. You want to go from where you are to where you want to be. The only way people make that kind of progress is they make a lot of little consistent steps forward, right? No one becomes a great golfer overnight. No one becomes an amazing leader overnight. What happens is we make a lot of small gains, right? And the frequency with which someone is working on their own growth and development, how often they're making those little gains toward whatever your goals are. It might be to be a better salesperson, or to develop skills for a next role, or just to make a better contribution to your team, whatever that might be. The more frequently you're working on something, the more frequently you're making a little bit of progress. That is the most important thing for someone's long-term success. Because what happens is if you're always working on something and you're taking self-accountability, you're going to make an immense amount of progress in 2, 3, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, right?
Right. Well, and don't you believe that just creates such momentum?
Yes.
Right? That when you start the building process, something becomes intriguing. You get a little more confident, right? You've acquired a little bit better skill. Oh, wow, that went better than I expected.
Yes.
Let me see if I can take that to the next notch. I love from an imagery standpoint, I think of it as a bullseye, right? And you're in your comfort zone or your knowledge space right in the center. And then you learn a little bit more and you move out to the next ring. And then you learn and get confident and you move out to the next ring. And so your comfort zone, if you will, just continues to ripple and expand. And that momentum of, well, I want a little bit more. I want a little bit more.
And that comfort zone, I think another analogy for that could be your sphere of competency.
Correct.
Another way to think about that would be your value, right? Your value in a role professionally just expands. And that creates career progression. That creates opportunity for you. That creates opportunity for your organization, right? This investing in yourself is really taking responsibility for increasing your capability and your impact and your value.
Yes. Yeah. And it really, my mind goes back to our kind of down, dirty, quick, simple definition of leadership. If we go back there to leadership development, right? Leadership is influence. It's not the role. It's not the title. It's not whether I manage or supervise anyone. So how do I continue to grow to be a person of hopefully positive influence?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, just to maybe overdo this simple analogy on volume, on how often are you being developed, I just want to mention one of the prompts I gave you was, why doesn't this happen? Why don't people make more progress? Why don't people take accountability? And I think even in really good organizations, would you say it's accurate that maybe a formal development opportunity might be presented to someone once a year at best?
At best.
Right? Hey, there's a program, there's an opportunity, there's a mentorship thing. At best, you might get that once a year, right? And if you're just waiting passively for that opportunity, the rest of the year goes by and you don't take advantage of the growth opportunities that were sitting right under your nose all year long if you were taking some accountability.
Well, and let's talk about us as humans and natural human behavior. So we have a development opportunity provided to us by our organization, right? Whether it's a conference or whether it's a training program, and we might take a little something away from that, and maybe we have a shift in behavior, but over time we oftentimes just slide back to where we were and back to our old behaviors and thought processes until, that next year rolls around and maybe another opportunity comes, right? And so we're back to that lack of growth that's happening in the space in between. We tend to slide.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're committed to maybe it's the program that's provided to you by the organization, but if you can use that as your motivator to then say, how do I continue to build on this, right?
Yeah.
So that starting point could be just hey, I saw something on social media and that was intriguing and I investigated a little bit more. That could be your starting point or your motivator. Your organization providing you an opportunity or some recognition could be your motivator. But then the key is don't let that just stop.
Right.
What's the next thing then that we can do as individuals to build on what might have been provided to us?
Wonderful. Okay, so I want people who are listening, let's give them some advice on what does it actually take? What can they do if they want to increase their own velocity of self-development?
Yeah.
And maybe this is a quick point. I want to at least mention that I'm going to tease here that at the end of this episode, we're going to make an offer that's only for listeners to just this one episode, to join us in a new virtual leadership academy that we're launching this July of 2026, a limited time offer. And I'll share some more information about that at the end of the episode. So if you want to jump there, feel free, I guess. But so that's going to be one answer to what people could do to take accountability for the self-development. And it's going to be a pretty good offer. But let's share broadly what people could do if they want to take accountability, if they want to drive their own self-development. What do the steps look like? What are some things people can actually do?
Yeah. So the first thing that comes to mind for me is look around. Who do you see modeling great behavior, great leadership, right? And then can you connect with those individuals? Or can you at the very least model that behavior?
Modeling.
Right? So how do you recognize, Brett is someone who, he seems to have this down. Mm-hmm. I wonder if he'd give me a few minutes to have a conversation, to give me some hints and ideas of things that I could do to progress, because it seems like he's got it figured out.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I think even a step that comes with or just before that is taking a moment to develop some awareness,
Yes.
right? Of both yourself and areas that you want to or you could improve in, as well as who are others who are excelling in those areas, right?
Right.
Could you talk a little bit about just awareness and the importance of self-awareness, either self or environmental awareness on personal development?
You bet. So it goes back a little bit to looking around and looking internally to say, where is the gap between what I'm doing and what Brett, I'm going to keep using you as an example, is doing, right? Or I think one of the biggest tips, techniques, if you will, is find someone that you trust and respect and ask them for feedback, right? What are you seeing that I'm not seeing? We all have blind spots. And so finding that trusted advisor, friend, right? Coworker, loved one, who can honestly give us some feedback to help us understand where should I even start? What should I focus on so that we can narrow the development process a little bit and get a little bit more laser focused back to that, well, let's work here, make some progress, right? Rather than, I'll use the analogy of fitness, right? Well, we're going to go crazy. On Monday, I'm getting up at 6 a.m. and I'm going to do this workout and I'm changing everything in my fridge. And, by Wednesday, oh yeah, well, the snacks come and I'm tired and, right?
Right.
It's no different from a professional development standpoint of let's identify a couple of things to work on and whether that's the self-reflection, whether that's someone giving me some feedback and advice, whether it's watching someone modeling the behavior that I'm after.
Yeah. And I love one of the pieces you said in there that went by pretty fast. I want to make sure people caught narrowing what you're working on to just a few things, developing first the awareness. Here's a couple things I could work on, and not saying, well, it's everything in my entire routine, my fridge, but no, I'm going to work on nutrition for a few months, right?
Right.
Then I'm going to work on my exercise routine a bit, right? Then I'm going to work on just narrowing that focus presents such an increased opportunity for people to actually make gains and improvement.
Right.
When you say, oh, I'm just trying to get better at everything at work, you're probably getting better at nothing.
Right.
If you said, no, for the next couple weeks, I want to really focus on, my listening. Great. That's doable. You'll make a bunch of progress, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know whether you want to get to some specifics, right? But in you sharing there, my thought went to, a great starting point for a lot of people from a development standpoint is I just need to be more curious, right?
Yes.
Rather than relying on my own assumptions, my own biases, I need to just question and be curious. That's an interesting point of view that I've never considered. Or sometimes it's, that seems a little whacked. We joke and say that's a clinical term, right? Whacked. But where did that come from? Why do I think it's that way?
Yes.
Right? And so if individuals just start from a place of curiosity, that curiosity can lead to such rapid development.
Agree. It's sort of, does it have to come essentially before self-awareness? Those two kind of come together, right?
Right.
You're curious. You're probably more curious if you're more self-aware, and probably vice versa.
Yeah. And or if I'm not that awfully self-aware, but I just choose
to be curious.
I'm going to choose to be curious.
Yes.
Wow. It starts creating so much more self-awareness of, wow, I had a pretty narrow thought process on that. Or I wasn't really good at looking at other perspectives other than my own, right? And so one begets the other.
If you're not curious, that probably means you don't think you have a lot of areas to improve on, right?
Right.
You're not curious about what others do or why they did it. You're probably not going to grow.
Yeah.
Agree. Talk a little bit about how do people... what are some other areas or things that people need to specifically do if they want to get better at developing skills, at growing?
You bet. Well, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but feedback is just absolutely critical, right? And it's not just seeking or accepting feedback, which can be difficult, especially if there's some constructive criticism there, if you will, right? But I am a huge believer of the philosophy that if we are not receiving feedback, both positive, right? To know, no, keep doing that. These are the things that are helping you progress, or these are the things that we want to see, or that these are the things that are moving you forward. And then, of course, the constructive feedback of, well, you know what, you might want to make some shifts here. But if we're in a situation, work environment, whatever the case may be, where that feedback isn't coming, then the most critical skill is to learn to seek the feedback. Because just because you're not getting it doesn't always mean everything's going as it should be.
That is true.
Yeah.
That leads me into maybe another topic we could dive into a bit. Let's talk about relationships and what types of relationships people should be seeking to have with others if they want to grow. How does, I'll keep it broad for the moment, but how do relationships affect development?
Well, certainly there has to be a sense of trust and respect. And that can be with someone who's very close in your circle, or someone, again, that you are seeing at a distance that you trust and respect just because of the way that they engage and the way that they behave. And that leads me to, certainly, we can lean on the people that we know, but one of the most critical forms of development, in my opinion, is finding a mentor, right? And it does not have to be this formal process, but it can be just someone that I admire, someone that I respect, and I can just request their time and assistance in my own development. Now, the key to that is to not have an expectation that they're going to do all the work developing me, right? They're going to, if they're going to be interested in helping me along, I have to show evidence that I've been interested in developing myself enough.
Yes.
Right. Now, typically, if I'm going to make the effort to have a conversation with someone and request that maybe we could meet for coffee on a regular basis, and be curious and ask questions and want their advice and feedback, I'm already giving them indications that I'm someone that they may want to be working with.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. Just this week, I had a conversation, and this is a little bit outside of my normal, our client lane, but I had a conversation with an assistant school district superintendent. And I was asking her about what buildings and what teachers, what their processes are for developing people, right? How do they think about developing teachers? Or what tools does a principal have to help people make progress, right? To grow. And I was introduced to a concept. Not every school district does this, but I believe it was, I don't actually remember the exact term, but there's a concept where schools try to take every couple of weeks a little bit of time for, let's imagine it's an elementary school, for the 3 third-grade teachers to come together and to talk about what's working and what's not working. And the number one thing that she shared with me that either makes that really a worthwhile investment of time, or something people say, I don't know, I'm glad we have this time, I can grade some more papers or something, is whether or not those teachers trust each other,
right?
Whether they're self-aware, whether they're able to be vulnerable and to say, hey, we just did that big unit exam. Your kids did way better than my kids did. What'd you do? What did you do that I didn't? What could I learn from what that looked like, right? Some of these concepts around self-awareness, trust, vulnerability, and consistency, Kevin. So the idea of if teachers, as an example, would do this consistently every couple weeks over time, imagine how much more effective they could become as teachers, instructors, just by having regular conversations and increasing that self-awareness, finding some areas to focus on, asking some questions, listening, right? This doesn't have to be complicated, but she explained to me that the old school way of doing this was hey, it's your class. Do what you want all year long.
Right.
And I understand there's some personal autonomy that suffers if we're constantly bringing people together and constantly reevaluating from an education perspective. But the upside of a process like that is inarguable, I think.
Yes. And it still lends itself to some individuality.
Sure,
right?
absolutely.
But the key there, I love that you went to vulnerability, right? Because I do have to accept the fact that, oh, wow, that class did do better than my class. Right. And so some of that is a potential reflection on what I chose to do, right? And not on my ability, but what were some of the choices that I made, and learning, oh, here were some other options, right? And so the not only the awareness, right, and sharing of the information and the knowledge of, well, what did you do differently than I did that took you to that place that was a little more successful? It's then making the choice to use some of those things.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I love this saying that education without application is just entertainment.
Oh, that's
right?
a good one. Yes.
So if I can go out and seek all kinds of great information, but if I'm then not processing, how does it apply to me and how do I utilize that? And then actually doing and trying and then going back through the cycle and being self-aware again of, did I get the outcome I was looking for there? What could I do differently? Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about excuses then. Why? What excuses come up? Why do people say, "Oh, well, I'm not doing this. I'm not investing in myself. I'm not growing." What excuses do you think people come up with?
First and foremost is time, right? Oh, I don't have time for that. But typically it's because they have this preconceived notion that it's, again, a development program, right?
Yes.
Or I've got to take a class, or I've got to take 2 days off work and go to this conference.
Mm-hmm.
I'm back to watch a 3-minute YouTube video of John Maxwell or Simon Sinek, or listen to us.
Exactly.
Right? But it can be, it's one of my favorite terms, but it's these nuggets, these bits of information that then can just build and lead. So time, not an excuse whatsoever. There's too much quick information out there anymore.
Well, and what we're talking about is, does it take a lot of time to be, to get some self-awareness? Does it take a lot of time to just reflect and say, if there was one thing I want to work on this month, what would it be?
Right.
Right? And just get some clarity on that, right? And as soon as you have clarity on that, you'll see opportunities to work on it. You'll see opportunities to apply, to stretch yourself just in your regular everyday work, right? In most cases.
Right.
So you're right. That is a poor excuse for not taking accountability for your development, is just saying, I'm too busy to take a class. Well, yeah. Great. Don't sign up for a class.
You bet.
Find other ways to be intentional about your development.
Yes.
Right? Or think about your priorities. Again, this development stuff compounds over time. And so if you don't make it a priority today or next week or next month or next year, you miss out on all of that compounding of your skills, your ability, your value.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. Anything else on this topic? Do you have any stories that come to mind? I want to move us toward my offer at the end and telling people what we're doing with our academy, but anything else that we haven't touched on?
Yeah. So this idea of self-development makes me think of someone that I had worked with several years ago, who we were both in the learning and development space at the time, and I was doing leadership development, and this individual was doing more programmatic, technical training. But she kept kind of peeking over the fence, if you will, saying, what are you doing over there? That's interesting. Could I read that article that you said you were using with the class that you've got? And so little by little, she was so interested in the content that I was teaching that without any, formal invite, without any formal direction, she just kept kind of inserting herself, if you would, right? And ultimately, over time, she developed as a leader, developed a more broad content base, and moved into a much higher and broad learning and development role within the organization. That, in my opinion, certainly was based on the fact that through her own desire, her own curiosity,
Yes.
just took her to new heights.
So checklist. Was she curious?
Absolutely.
Did that lead to self-awareness?
Yes.
Did she take anything that she learned and apply it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Regularly?
Yes.
Okay. Did it lead to career advancement for her?
Yes.
Did it lead to increase in value
Absolutely.
for her?
Yeah.
Right? Did
Yeah.
it lead to increased personal happiness for her?
You bet. She was far more engaged in her work. She wasn't disengaged before, but the level of engagement, the level of excitement around the impact that she was making in a new role was amazing.
That is such a great story. And just in case you're out there listening and you're going, yeah, that's great for one person or one story, I just want to tell our listeners, Kevin, how often I talk to senior level leaders in organizations about their people, about their development path. And I'll ask questions like, do you have your next level of leadership developed? Are you worried about succession planning? Are you worried about emerging leadership? And 70, 80, 90% of time, people say, yeah, I'm worried about that. I don't know if we have the talent that we need. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, sometimes people who want opportunity, who want to grow, who want to be promoted, they kind of feel like they're not allowed to work on those things unless they're invited, unless they're asked. And that gap is a big problem because those same senior level leaders would say, I would love people to step up and show increased curiosity, increased responsibility to show me that they want to take on additional stretch projects or things like that. That's what would help them answer that question of, do we have the bench strength that we need? Do we have our next level of product leaders, of production leaders, of people leaders in our system? And everyone listening has the ability to be that star performer, to show that, hey, I'm here, I'm ready, I'm eager. And don't let any level of insecurity or I'm not sure if it's my place, don't let that stand in the way. Get that out of your head.
You do not need an invitation and you do not need permission, right? Yeah. You can just take the initiative on an individual standpoint. On the organizational standpoint, right? I think of the phrase, well, what if I develop them and they leave, right? Well, but the big problem is what if you don't develop them and they stay?
Yes.
And so again, the opportunities, I won't say are endless, right? But the opportunities will appear in this further development that you just wouldn't be able to see otherwise because of what others are seeing in you as you're developing.
I think what we're talking about today is probably the number one most powerful skill that an individual can develop in their professional career, right? Just the idea to say, no, I'm developing, I'm working on things, I'm going places, right? I'm building skills because it may not create the opportunity you want in 3 months, but it will over time. It absolutely will. Your value becomes unoverlookable.
I love it.
Awesome. All right. Any final comments on this before I get to do a little special promo this episode only for our new Virtual Leader Academy?
I have plenty of final thoughts, but right. But it's all up to us. And I think again of the phrase that we have hanging in our office that says, there is no such thing as small change. Small change just continues to move us forward.
I love it. And I'm trying not to make a pennies analogy there. Small change. I don't know. We are getting rid of the penny, but I agree with you from a personal development perspective. Love it. All right. Well, here is a special offer just for people who listen to this episode specifically. This specific promo, we don't plan on sharing it anywhere else. But if you haven't heard, Better Culture is starting. We're launching in July of 2026 a virtual leadership development academy. You can find details if you just go to betterculture.com/academy about what we're building. But it's a 12-month long program, all virtual, where you'll have one live course you can attend every single month that I will instruct. You'll also have one sort of Q&A session where you bring your challenges, problems, questions to Better Culture, and we'll riff with you and give ideas and share with the group of other members on what could you do, how could you respond to that, etc. So 2 opportunities every month to uncover some self-awareness, to get focused on just a couple things you could be working on, to have a group of peers or other Academy members to share experiences with, and to have a regular and consistent cadence over a year-long period and beyond, if you want, on working on yourself. Anything you want to share just about the Academy before I mention what the offer is?
Yeah, no, I of course am confident that the content will be amazing. But what I'm really excited for participants of the Academy is the opportunity to build a community and a network, right? That can be trusting, and that vulnerability that you talked about. What are the challenges, right? It just in creating a safe space for that development.
Yes. Well, and one of the things I'm most excited about with this virtual academy is the accessibility of it, Kevin. As you know, our previous programs, if someone wanted to enroll directly in one of Better Culture's leadership development programs, all of our previous programs were a couple $1,000s to attend and to be a part of a year-long cohort or program. This virtual academy is a little bit over, it's $1,299 for a year-long membership. But if you're interested and if it's within your budget, I'm actively wanting to recruit people that are interested in what we're doing to be a part of this when we launch in July. And so for podcast listeners, that price is cut by 50%. So you can go to Academy, you can go to the checkout page and put in just the coupon code POD50. So pod for podcast, POD50, and that'll knock your price down by half. But that's only good if you're listening to this episode through June of 2026. This code won't last forever. It's just in our pre-launch period for folks that would be interested in joining us as we kick this community off and really investing in themselves.
I'm glad you said investing, right? If you're part of an organization who is willing to pay the price, right? 50% off, good deal, right? But individually, right?
Yes.
If your budget can afford it,
yes,
this is an investment, not an expense.
Absolutely. There'll also be a specific link in the show description you can check that'll take you straight to that checkout page that should pre-apply the coupon. So that should make it a little easier as well. But spread the news with us. We're so excited about this community. And in our pre-launch here, we really want to get folks in this program who are serious about self-development, who care about culture, and who will make really great contributions to what we're building.
Love it. Love it.
Awesome. Well, this has been a wrap. I think a good episode. Hopefully we did this justice. It is such an important topic. What are you doing to develop yourself consistently? Kevin, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Brett. Wonderful conversation.
Awesome. Everybody, go make something just a little bit better today. Thank you. Before we wrap up, I want to share something exciting. For the first time ever, Better Culture has launched a virtual leadership academy, a 12-month experience for leaders and managers who are serious about expanding their leadership skills, impact, and influence. Whether you're investing in yourself or a team of managers, this program was built for you. If you're serious about building something better, this is your next step. Learn more at betterculture.com/academy.